California Governor Gavin Newsom has confirmed that the state is actually going to be sending it out $9.5 billion to tax refunds to Californians all across the state. These checks are called the middle class tax refund checks, so if you're in the middle class or even the lower middle class, you'll be getting stimulus payments in the state. The release of the programs to get the money back into the people. It's an extension of the Golden State stimulus, which distributed $9 billion to families, in fact, and the billions of dollars more in crisis relief funds that were sent to residents to help pay for rent, cover overdue utility bills, in addition to supporting small businesses. The governor said, "We know it's expensive right now, and California's putting money back into your pockets to help out. We're sending out refunds worth over $1,000 to help families pay for everything from gas to groceries." The governor's office has said that payments range from $400 to $10,000, $1,000 for people without taxes, and $200 to $700 for individuals, depending on their income and whether they claim dependent. A total of 18 million payments will be distributed all in all, with an estimated 8 million direct deposits set to start arriving in bank accounts between the end of this month and the middle of next month. The state controller said the inflated costs for everyday necessities have forced Maine to cut corners or make impossible choices, so people can be getting stimulus checks and should expect to receive it. And not only that, but in Maine, you have until the end of the month to claim a $850 stimulus check thanks to the state budget surplus.
Community partnerships, donations, and gifts, and education projects. The Fish and Wildlife Services currently utilize volunteers for tours, restoring habitat, plant and animal survival, staffing refuge stores and visitor centers, and all other activities. Well, I believe more work needs to be done to improve our overall management of our national wildlife refuges. The volunteer activity that this bill will reauthorize are an effective tool in performing needed work without increasing costs to taxpayers. Solutions such as this legislation are especially welcome during the times like these when our national debt continues to balloon and inflation comes to soaring because of reckless spending pushed forwards by the majority.
President Biden has made a very big announcement on his Build Back Better Act. Lawmakers are pushing for a new deadline to approve the massive spending bill. A fourth round of stimulus checks may begin being sent out this month, everybody, so stay tuned. According to Business Insider, Joe Biden reportedly told Democratic donors at 2 California fundraisers that he needed some legislative firepower to help him get his priorities passed on Capitol Hill. This is a nod to the thin margins Democrats hold in Congress. At the second fundraiser in Los Angeles, Biden remarked on the evenly divided Senate, where he has to rely on Kamala Harris in her tie-breaking vote and the unanimous Democratic unity to get his biggest priorities over the finish line. According to sources familiar with the matter, Biden said, "We need 2 more senators," in referencing Democrats Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona and Manchin of West Virginia. They are the 2 moderate lawmakers who have upended some of his biggest domestic policy items since the beginning of his term. And while Biden has been able to rely on Sinema and Manchin in their overwhelming support for his judicial nominees, he stumbled with them on negotiations regarding the Build Back Better Act, the multi-trillion-dollar spending package that is still being negotiated on. The president did not call out the lawmakers by name, but they said they're slowing up what we're able to do. Democrats are facing a difficult electoral roadmap this year, as they are defending narrow majorities in both houses of Congress, while also contending with Biden's middling approval ratings. But the president, everybody, said he was hopeful that the party could perform well and ask donors to help him achieve his legislative goals. If Democrats could pick up 2 seats in the Senate without losing any of their current members, they would have a 52 Senate majority. That's enough to potentially weaken the filibuster and pass bills without requiring support from either Manchin or Sinema. Manchin said at a World Economic Forum panel that he believes lawmakers will be able to get something done. He has said that the new package should fight inflation, reduce deficit, and address climate change. He also told reporters last week that all 50 Senate Democrats should be able to support a bill that cuts prescription costs. The Federal Reserve will also dominate the conversation for investors this week. The central bank's latest policy meeting will be held this week, with the Fed expected to announce at least another 0.5% increase in its benchmark interest rate. The Fed will release its latest summary of economic projections on Wednesday, offering officials some forecasts for GDP growth, inflation, and future rate hikes. Following late Friday's data on inflation, investors are now bracing for the potential of more aggressive interest rate increases from the Fed, perhaps as soon as this week. The Bureau of Labor Statistics' May Consumer Price Index report unexpectedly rose 8.6%. That causes some worries on Wall Street that inflation has become more entrenched in the U.S. economy, potentially pushing Fed officials to take more heavily handed action in efforts to slow surging costs. This relentlessly aggressive stance could include raising interest rates by 0.75%. The crisis has led to a new era of inflation inequality. Economists warn in which poor households bear the brunt of rising prices. A recent analysis found that low and middle-income households spend about 7% more in 2021 for the same products they bought in 2020 or 2019. That translates into about $3,500 for the average household.
And the profits of these corporations going up massively, even as working people across this country cannot afford their gas at the pump. This is profiteering, and it's not just by those oil companies. Look at the food companies, look at the agriculture companies. You are seeing people profiteering right now, and those are the people that our colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to help. The difference here is that Democrats want to help regular working people, folks who are struggling across the country just to make ends meet. That's what Democrats are about. And that's why when you look at the American Rescue Plan, it was an unmitigated success. And it was an unmitigated success for the right group of people, for the 90% of Americans who desperately need the help, not for the top 10% that the Republicans are always trying to deliver freebies for. No, the reality is our economy was devastated by the pandemic. Unemployment was at its lowest levels in over half a century, but President Biden and Democrats acted boldly to deliver a relief package that met the scale of the crisis. And thanks to the American Rescue Plan, the U.S. economy has rebounded faster than anyone predicted. It helped people stay in their homes. We have cut hunger by 25%. We've cut child poverty in half. We've helped wages to rise. Unemployment is down to 3.6%, a level that the Congressional Budget Office did not predict we would reach for the entire decade. A level, by the way, that is the lowest level of unemployment in over half a century. So you want to talk about a debacle, talk about the economy under Donald Trump that rewarded only the richest people and the Republican tax cut of several years ago. You want to talk about success for working people, talk about the American Rescue Plan. Now, let me get back to my questions. After just 2.5 years, we've returned the U.S. labor market back to its pre-pandemic strength. And our recovery has been much more equitable in stark contrast to the response to the Great Recession. Dr. Coronado, can you elaborate on why it was so important to go big and provide meaningful relief quickly, and how this response contrasts to the Great Recession?
Yeah, so there is a lot of research that shows when people are unemployed for an extended period of time or out of the labor force for an extended period of time, it leaves a permanent imprint on their earnings capacity. So their wages, the wages that they return to the labor force at are lower, and the growth is slower, and they are more prone to spells of unemployment down the road. There's lots of evidence of this, which is why speed is important. It is important not just to restore the economy, but to bring people back in. There's been a lot of talk of people being on the sidelines. That has been turning around with great force. People were on the sidelines for a lot of reasons, because of childcare problems, because of health concerns, even after the lockdowns were lifted. So it was a complex and difficult situation for many families. That is now beginning to heal, and we are seeing the labor force participation of prime age people. We're on track to exceed the pre-pandemic levels in the next 6 months. So there is no problem with people's willingness to work. They want to, and now, as you noted, the structure of the benefits is going disproportionately to lower wage workers who have had decades and decades of underperformance. We have seen widening income inequality since the 1980s. And for the first time since then, we are seeing actually wage gains much stronger, twice the pace for the lowest quintile of workers as it is for the top quintile of workers. I just want to clarify one other point of red versus blue states. Since I live in a red state, the cities are blue, and we definitely took advantage of all the the American Rescue Plan programs. Our mayor heartily engaged in providing assistance to renters to keep them in. We are a service sector city. We got hit, I'm in Austin, we got hit really hard, and we bounced back really fast, in large part because a lot of these programs kept people going.
Well, I'm going to ask you a quick question because my last colleague went over on time, so I know my time's expired. But really quickly, Mr. Chairman, the last part of the U.S. response was necessary because of holes in our existing supports. What could we do differently so that the help that people need during a crisis are in place automatically? Dr. Coronado.
Yeah, so again, I think one of the things that these programs did expose